spanning the entire globe, involving hundreds of different cultures, explaining the same phenomenon by different names.
The nature of the footprints, namely their remarkable consistency, their biomechanical appropriateness, those aspects that are extremely compelling.
Hey guys,
Hey
welcome
everybody
to the Bigfoot Influencers.
Ooh, we're so excited to have you guys. We look a little different today.
Yeah,
We
it's a
got like
different-
a little camera
yeah,
going here.
It's a different camera, different computer.
We
we're
look a
using
little
today.
like bronze. What
Something,
is
maybe.
it? Something.
I'm not sure.
We kind of match the background. What's going on, right?
I think so. Yeah,
I like it. It looks good.
Light's a little bright for me, but I'll
Okay.
survive. If you guys see me squinting tonight, you'll know why.
We'll pull out the shades.
Yeah. So I hope everyone's doing well tonight. We're thrilled to have you guys here. Had an exciting couple weeks. We got a lot going on too. Or it's getting a little cooler. I actually a couple weeks ago I got to spend some time with W.J. Sheehan.
Right.
Yeah, he's the author of, I think he's on his 10th or 11th book. It's called Bigfoot Terror in the Woods. Just I was in the area where he was. They have him and his brother Kevin do a really cool encounter podcast every week. And had a fun time. Just got to hang out with Bill. Got to meet him for the first time in person. We had dinner, just broke bread, and just hung out. He's just such a cool dude. And you guys go check his podcast and his book's out. You guys probably already know who he is, but he's a really cool dude. So that was fun.
That's a cool thing that you did.
Yeah,
awesome.
It was. So how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. We've had a crazy day.
Yes.
Sick kitty.
Yeah.
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 Go to the bank, realize I don't have my cash deposit on me.
Yeah.
Just like, I don't know what it is. You hit 50 years old and it's like, your brain already starts to go.
Yeah,
basically.
I'll get there one day.
Baby,
so
you're 9 months younger than me.
Yeah,
all right, get over it.
I'm 34.
I'm not a cougar and I didn't rob the cradle. Okay, it's only 9 months.
I know.
Okay.
So tonight, though, or today, wherever you are listening, we've got an amazing guest.
We do.
So Mr. Paul Graves. Paul's like a legend. I mean, Paul's been around, I think 1988 or so is when he first got involved in this. He's in the Pacific Northwest. He's been out in the woods. He's interacted with a ton of different researchers. Plus, he's out in the woods all the time doing his own thing. And he's got some fascinating stories himself. He's got witnesses he's talked to. And he's going to be a lot of fun to talk to.
We get to ask him a lot of questions.
Let's explain to the audience what's going on with the video tonight.
Oh my God. Okay, guys. So basically, I don't know if you guys have Apple products, but they needed to be updated like in the past couple weeks.
Oh.
And so normally we're doing the podcast on my laptop, but since I didn't do the update because I don't have any room left in my memory. Anyway, long story short, that has nothing to do with it.
No.
I'm sorry.
There's a good explanation. Paul's Paul's going to be audio only tonight. So I know you guys are going to get stuck.
Can we tell them the real reason?
Yeah, Paul doesn't have a camera on his computer. That's all.
He has a Dell.
Yeah, well, yeah. So,
and I want to talk about the computer.
Well, we'll let Paul. If you guys want to talk about the computer, we'll do that. That's fine. It's up to you and Paul. But we're gonna bring Paul in because he's amazing.
We're gonna bring him in, but we're not gonna be able to see him.
You guys are gonna hear Paul, so
he's gonna be like
virtual.
Yep, virtual.
Hey, Paul, are you there?
Yeah, I'm right here. Hi.
Hey, there you are. So the audience are stuck with just looking at us tonight. But
it's better than
just a blank screen.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how you doing, Paul?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, we're so excited to meet you. Even though we can't see you, I was telling you before that you look like you sound like a young surfer dude. So that's that. I'm sure a lot of people in the Bigfoot world know what you look like anyway. But the first question I wanted to ask you, Paul, was, so where exactly do you live in Washington?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I live in what's called North Central Washington. So most people think, of Washington State being all wet and everything, and 1/3 of it is wet. The state's divided up kind of. The Cascade Mountain Range goes all the way from the northern part of the state clear through to the southern, the whole length of the state, and it's kind of divided right at the crest of the Cascades. So west of the Cascades is where your major population center is, Seattle, etc. And much wetter over there. You get your coastal temperate weather, and then east of the Cascades becomes much drier, and it's 2/3 the land, but hardly any people. So it's still a lot of country out here. There's a lot of back country. We have what's called back country, and just a lot of back country right on my doorstep where you could get out and basically get lost if you aren't careful.
Yeah, I
Right.
can imagine. And you've definitely had like a long history of Bigfoot. But one of the things that I would like to know is like what really got you motivated in the subject in the first place.
It was probably just hearing the first real detailed account by an actual person while I was in the room. And that happened in 1988. I was at my sister's and we were watching a TV program about this Bigfoot, and she had a couple friend over. And after the show, the guy was just sitting there and he just kind of put his head up. He goes, well, something, I've seen one of those things. And it's like, no way, and something just sparked then. I don't know what it was. And it just, from that moment on, I was on a quest.
Wow, that is so cool.
And at first I thought, I didn't tell anybody the first 10 years I did research. I just tried to find out as much info on it, but it was like, I'm going to be the one, I'm not telling anybody because I'm going to be the one that's going to find. But no, it doesn't work that way. As I soon learned, actually, I don't think we'll ever find Bigfoot in my lifetime or probably my children's lifetime. I think we would have found him by now. We've got the hunters of the old days, they relied on hunting, and I know there's stories of them being killed, don't get me wrong, but I just think there's more to it, and it's kind of like, what's going on today and everything. It's like, well, something would have happened by now, there's something else going on with these guys, but they're definitely out there, 100%. I mean,
Yeah, and what I always appreciate about you is you're one of the coolest dudes in the world, and you're just out there trying to help solve the mystery. You don't get involved in any of the back and forth. Everybody who knows you just respects you and thinks you're the coolest dude in the world. So I think that's amazing, Paul. So I did want to ask you though, when you first got started, back in 88 or so, what did you do? Did you just start you did some start looking up the history? Obviously you're in an area that has a ton of history as it is. Where did you just start looking up historical events? Did you talk to witnesses? What did you do to get started?
Yeah, basically all of the above right there. My mom actually was a newspaper reporter for Wenatchee Daily World here, the local newspaper, for a number of years. She was an investigative reporter, actually, among other things that she did. And she kind of taught me a little bit about, getting or talking to a witness, not leading a question, things like that. But I literally started just pretty much asking everybody, and I would just ask in a really frank matter. I never made it like it was a funny or big thing. I was always just real straight, and I would get straight answers. And it was amazing because in Wenatchee, of course, we're backed up to the Cascades, and there's a lot of hunters and fishermen here and stuff. And whether the person that I was talking to, like in line at the grocery store, for instance, hey, have you ever seen a big? I mean, in my early years, it was like that. I mean, literally. And you wouldn't believe the stories that I got because, they would go, well, if it wasn't them, they'd go well, my dad or my cousin saw this, and so there was a member of their family that reached out, and it was wide reaching. It was really much broader than I realized, thinking that, this was just something that came across every once in a while. No. And especially here in Washington State, there's a rich and a lot of people here know that they're out there, but they're not on a quest to try to prove it to anybody or anything. I mean, who are you going to prove it to anyway,
Right, right.
It's just a numbers game. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. But I mean, some of these folks that have had encounters here in Washington, I mean, they're just the most straight up folks you could imagine, and they've had some really hair raising encounters. I mean, and it just happens, and it happens year after year. So,
So I'm assuming, I mean, how many witnesses over the years do you think you've talked to?
oh gosh, probably over 1,000 anyway.
Wow, that's a lot.
I've got hundreds documented. I started my own database basically in 88 and started writing everything down, whether it was just even on a piece of paper and it was a name and a date and a place or whatever, and started. But I've got folders here. I've got a lot of stuff filled up and countless witnesses that have had sightings or encounters or other things happen that we think's related to the Sasquatch.
So, did you want to ask? I thought. So, was there something? So, what's? This has kind of been itching at me for a while because you've been around so long in the subject. Early on, when you were talking to witnesses, back in '88, what changed from then till later, or did anything change? Did your theories or your beliefs change on the subject after talking to witnesses and being out in the woods from early on till now?
Well, yeah, I mean, a little bit just because of the encounters that I've personally had too. And, when you add that in with what eyewitnesses are seeing and describing, and then you relate it to some of the things that's happened personally, yeah, I kind of have a different outlook. I mean, there's an area that I go to now that I've been going to for 20 years, and it's so active in there. I mean, this latest incident that happened up there about a month and a half ago with my good friend John Andrews, who lives here in Wenatchee too. We got it all recorded. And I mean, it sounds like a football team running into my camp and running around right up next to my tent. Wow. And we're asleep though. That's the weird thing. We do wake up at one moment when the thing runs off really quick. I mean, it sounds like a freight train out there. And it took my mirror and bent my mirror back and left a big handprint on the top.
Let's go back.
Yeah. We need to hear the whole story, Paul.
Yeah, now that you brought it up, I'm like, I got to hear this from the beginning.
Yeah, so start from the beginning.
And John Andrews is a legend too. I mean,
this is just an area I've been going to. Like I said, it's one of my areas for over 20 years, and I've had just incredible. In fact, I had a sighting there, short sighting in 2020, daylight sighting, about 30 seconds to a minute after what I think it pushed a tree over. I mean, this tree came over and then it doubled back and walked back across the road, and I caught it just as it was going into the slide alder on the side of the road. But that's one of a number of things at this particular location. But we were just up there about a month and a half ago, and John's a big audio guy like myself. I've for many years recorded wildlife audio, and I can analyze them on my computer in a spectrograph. Kind of got Dave Ellis even into that a long time ago and stuff. And it's a good way to, analyze sounds. And I've got multiple recorders, because I use them for recording my music too. But John actually, he turned his recorder on. He's got a really good Sony, and 28 minutes into us sleeping, because you can hear us sleeping. We were both tired. We went to bed. And I was set up right next to my Jeep on the ground. John was set up right next to me, really tight and close in. And 28 minutes, this thing comes in running into our camp. I mean, and runs right up to my tent. I mean, it's plain as day. And it was there for almost an hour running around the camp, and we got it all recorded. I mean, the recording is just incredible. And you would think, though, that you would be waking up and going out there. I mean, if this was humans, I mean, I'd be out there with my gun going, who's out here messing around, And we woke up one time. I woke up two times and then just boot right back to sleep. And I felt real euphoric that night. Like, I didn't feel scared or anything. Felt like I was going to get a good night's sleep. And anyway, it's all on tape, and that's the neat thing about it. And you can hear when it bangs up on next to my car, because I know the sound of my car. I bang up next to it too, and you can hear when it bangs up next to the car right on the other side of me. And the next morning, like I said, my mirror was bent backwards, which was not there the night before. I've never even seen it bent backwards, and there was huge old handprint and fingerprints going up the side rail. And I actually collected some of the residue from that with a Q-tip.
Were you
And
able to get any photos?
well, no, see, that's the funny thing about it, Dan. I mean, it's like here we're out there Bigfooting, trying to get,
Right.
and no, these things, the Indians are right. I'm telling you, these guys can put you into a state. And a lot of times it happens late at night because they want to come into your camp, whether you're getting up to go pee or whatever, and you're rustling around. They can temporarily put you down. I just believe that. I don't know what it is. I don't know, because we should have been up and, like you said, investigating more, trying to do whatever, you gather more info or whatever. I mean, it was so loud, and I mean, definitely if I would have heard that, I would have tried to get up, but you don't. That's the weird thing about it. And even John, he was like, "Oh, I'm a light sleeper. I didn't hardly sleep through anything." And then you listen to the tape, and it's like, nope, he was asleep, because you can hear him.
So has that happened before? In
Oh, yeah.
previous? So that's pretty
Yes.
normal.
No, it's happened a couple times. And the other spot that it's happened was at Bumping Lake, and happened 3 times there. And one time was just really intense. It was a scary feeling. And I had my thermal imager with me and everything. And it was like, you could have given me $1 million and I wouldn't have got out of my tent. And I felt like it was
so
right
tell us
behind
that
me.
story, Paul. Can you start from the beginning on that encounter?
Well, I was in there with a group of people, and I feel like we were probably being too rambunctious. There was too much. This was early. This was 10 years, 15 years ago. There was just too much going on. For one thing, I don't do screams anymore. Maybe in my early days, I might have put out a yell or a scream. I just don't do them anymore. I don't know what I'm saying. Now, a wood knock type thing is different, because that's a human type noise anyway, whether you're chopping wood or whatever. But I don't put out calls and do that whole calling thing. And there was a group of us in here, and I felt like we probably disrespected a group of Sasquatch or whatever, and they were just fed up with it. But it came in after I'd gone to bed, and it felt like I heard it. It sounded like an elephant. Literally, the ground vibrated and shook so hard, and it felt like it ran up right behind me and shot a ray gun into my back, and I couldn't even budge. And I was just terrified. I mean, I really had a weird sense of terror. And like I say, I'm used to sleeping in the woods on the ground my whole life. I've backpacked throughout the whole Cascades by myself for many years.
Okay, so Paul, I'm sorry. So you were saying you were lying down and something ran up behind you, but were you in a tent?
I was in my tent. Yeah.
And
I
so
just got back into the tent. Yep.
Through the tent, it felt like a ray gun shot in your back,
Yep.
right?
Yep. All of a sudden, I was just frozen, and
so you couldn't
and terrified
move.
at this, and I couldn't move,
Okay.
and terrified at the same time. Really, really scared. And like I said, I don't get scared, much stuff. And it was just one of those incidences that was so different. I just don't know what it was.
Did anybody else at the camp experiencing anything weird? Okay,
Yes,
tell
they
us
did.
about that.
There was a couple other people that one guy got like really sick. Generally, when these incidents happens, it can affect up to 20-25% of the people. So not everybody gets affected. It seems like, but there's something to that whole thing that is, again, not sure what's going on there.
So some people can get stunned by whatever kind of power they're using, and some people, it just doesn't work on them.
Well, and but see, that could be just as simple as, you've got 4 or 5 people in the camp, is he directing that particular, or whoever directing it to a certain group, or is it just going out in frequencies and hitting everybody? I think it's more of a directed thing. So,
I wonder if some people have had it at one time and other times they don't have it. That'd be interesting to know. I don't know if you've ever documented any of that, Paul.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. There's many times that in the same spot that I've never gotten it before. That was the worst time. There's been 3 times in that particular area that I've had it, but many, 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 many other people have had it. It's well documented and written up with other people that have had strange things like that happen, cramps happening, people getting sick, trepid feelings, different things like that. So
And
I
that's
think there's something to it.
so Paul, does it ever happen before they hear or see anything? Do they start
Yes.
getting so they start getting the feeling first?
Yes. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's pretty intense.
No, it definitely happens to multiple people in certain areas. So I don't know what that whole, but the Indians talked about that that the Bigfoots were able to temporarily, what they called, hypnotize you and put you in this temporary state of whatever, and it could be as simple as some people think, maybe infrasounds involved. You've heard some theories with that. Infrasound is below human hearing. Humans hear from around 20 to 20,000 hertz or whatever. So it would be below that. And, we've actually made and tested biological weapons using sound to, to affect people in different ways. It's kind of like, when a rapper comes up to your corner, he's got the rap thing going, and you're sitting in your house. It's like you can feel it. You're just like, because you don't get all the notes. You're just feeling that way, way low thing. But it's even lower than that. It's inaudibles. You can't hear. And again, that's just a theory. So
yeah, and it's funny, Paul, how you brought up hypnotism, because that's exactly what I was thinking when you said that it works on some people and it doesn't work on others, because I think it's exactly the same thing with hypnotisms.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you're right. I never thought of it that way. Yeah.
So maybe like somehow it, some people are able to pick up their frequency and others aren't, or, who knows what it is.
Well, I felt like I was individually, at this particular one, I was individually directed. There was other people in the camped, 20 feet over this way, 50 feet over this way. So was it just directed at me, or was he going around to each tent and, hovering over them?
Because you felt like when it shot you, it was a very direct kind of.
Oh, yeah. Oh, big time. Yeah. I mean, and it came on like boom, instantly.
That is so weird.
Wow. So how long did it last?
It lasted until I fell asleep, and then I woke up the next morning and the sun was shining, birds were tweeping, singing, and it was like, that was weird, because I felt like I was in a whole different world.
How do you physically feel though? Were you drained, or were you just?
I was drained big time. After that weekend, I was drained. Yeah.
Crazy.
That's definitely interesting.
Yeah.
So and how far is that from where is that near where you're normally at, or was that in the same area?
It's close. It's about 3 hours. I mean, it's not as close as some of my what I call my home areas, but it's still within the Wenatchee National Forest, fairly close to Mount Rainier. So you're kind of down in that country.
Yeah, so Wenatchee is such a unique, like you said earlier, it's such a unique place, because you're coming off of the mountain range, and then you're going into almost, I guess is desert a good way to describe it?
Yeah, we're right. The Columbia River that splits our town in half. There's Wenatchee and East Wenatchee, and on the west side here is the beginning of the Cascade Range. Right at the edge, right at the end of my street up here is the foothills start. And that's actually the county I live in, Chelan County. It's 83% national forest.
So I guess that would, yeah. Is that what you would attribute it to, why it's such a hot spot there? I mean, can you talk about the environment a little bit? Sure.
That has a lot to do with it, because I mean, you go anyway west. I mean, there's nothing until you get to Seattle for 100 miles other than mountains, and then you've got the wilderness areas and which are set aside. There's a lot of set aside lands in Washington between the wilderness areas, the Indian reservations, etc., roadless areas, that's kind of put aside land that is basically good habitat for these things. So, fortunately it's a good state. You've got the coast range comes right down into Washington state geographically. If you didn't have the border with Canada, the very end of the coast range, even the glaciers, comes right down in and ends just above Wenatchee up here. So, and the coast range is actually bigger than the Himalayas. It's a massive mountain range.
Yeah, it's so big out, huge out there that I remember. Yeah, talked to some folks about that.
Desolate.
So quick question for you, Paul. So, what early researchers did you really get into when you first became interested in the subject?
Well, Rene Dahinden was one. One of his books was the first one that I got kind of started reading, and Ivan Sanderson, his book was published the same year I was born, 1961.
Mm-hmm.
And Bernard Heuvelmans, I think I pronounced that right.
Hoovermans, or
his book,
right.
which was kind of interesting. I know he kind of went off, on some different tangents, but it was still kind of an interesting book. And of course, John Green, I did have a chance to meet and spend a couple weekends with John Green.
Oh, that's cool.
I went up with Bob Gimlin and Bobo and Tom Yamarone, just us four one weekend, spent the whole weekend with John Green. So learned a lot from him. He was really gracious. He let us go through his files. And I mean, look at anything we wanted. And he's just a cool guy just to hang out with and just, be in his company. I was very grateful.
And you spent some time with Dr. John Bindernagel also, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, I got to be friends with John, and
I'm going to pause you there because I want you to, because there might be, most of the audience should know who he is, but just in case, can you just share who Dr. John Bindernagel was with the audience? Then you can talk about how you and him spend time together.
Sure. He was a Canadian wildlife biologist, and if anyone gets a chance to read his biography that was written by his good friend, it's an excellent book and really shows even what I learned more about John and the work that he did in Africa, for instance. And he would go out on these work things that he would get, through the schooling and stuff, and they would pay for it. It would be a year or 2 years, and he would go to this country and that country, and he would do animal work and counting and different things like that, and he early on saw kind of what the whole thing was about, and was really discouraged by, even early that the subject wasn't getting more looked at by his peers and stuff. He really struggled with that his whole career. But boy, you talk about a cool guy. That guy was so nice, and he would talk to anybody. He would just spend time with anybody, and just, really cool guy.
So what did you and he do together?
There was a couple things. He came up actually to the last encounter that I was telling you about, where we recorded it, where it came in. He came up there because there was an incident that happened up there where all these stick structures appeared over my tent within a few days of me being there. And it's an amazing display. And I took him there, and then he also came up and looked at a possible den that was made up by our property outside of Wenatchee. So. And then I met him numerous other times, like over at the Olympic Peninsula, over at the Olympic Project property, actually Derek Randall's place over there. We would meet over there, and got into the woods with him a couple other places, but, numerous places out in the woods. But he was just, boy, he knew a lot. He taught me a lot about how to be a better citizen scientist, really. He reminded me of Columbo, that old show Columbo. You guys might be old enough to remember. He'd whip out.
We're not that much younger.
He knows, I don't.
He'd whip out the little notepad and start writing down notes. That's the way John was. He was just so cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. That he was.
Yep.
So going back to that, I guess, Paul, I want to ask. You mentioned earlier, some of the Native American beliefs. What did you interact with, any folks from the tribes, and how did that influence, what your thoughts are? And then after that, I want to get into the stick structures.
Yeah. So early on, my first expedition that I ever went on, I didn't know other people were doing this. And then in 2004, my wife actually ended up talking to, my wife Becky ended up talking to Matt Moneymaker, and he was putting on a thing over here on the coast. And it was to a place that I grew up going, Claylock, up along the Washington coast. That's where it was going to be based. And so I actually met Mel Scahan, who's a lifelong friend now, and he's Native American from the Yakima tribe. So I learned a lot from Mel, and he's just a great guy too, and just so humble and down to earth but yeah, the Indian belief, like the Wenatchee Indian, for instance, the name for the Bigfoot's called Chonatu or Chonato, and it translates literally to night people. So there again, you get, it's not like another animal. It's a type of people. All the Indian tribes looked at these as more of a people type of people. Whether they were a long lost hominid or whatever. Closely related to us.
Wow. So what else do they think, though? I mean, so can you get a little deeper into what their beliefs are from your perspective on what these people are?
Well, they have different beliefs for different tribes, but a lot of them do know that they're definitely out there, mostly in Northwest, especially the Northwest tribes. But it varies, on some of the members too. Some of the younger members I'm hearing, aren't quite into it as some of the older members, or it could be that could be reversed too. It could work both ways. I think overall that they definitely know they're there, and their whole way of going about it is just much more laid back and not, like, oh, we need to, whatever, talk about this or this or this. They just know they're out there, and they know there's not a lot they can do as far as like what they are. There's just that discourse still between humans and what Bigfoots are. Bigfoots are definitely on their own, walking their own, walk or whatever.
So they just expect, they just like they're just part of nature, just
part of nature. Yeah. I mean, totally. And, they respect them, and most of them give them room, and they know where they're at. I know some of the reservations, they even set parts of the reservation, aside for these things, So, yeah, deep history with the Indians with them.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, what other crazy things have happened to you out in the woods? I mean, you shared a couple things, but what else has happened to you, or what have you seen?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I've been close to these things so many times. That's kind of the funny thing with, people ask, well, are we any further than we were 50 years ago? I believe that we are, because 50 years ago, bless their hearts, Renee and Peter Byrne, of course, who just passed away. Peter actually dated one of my mom's best friends. But
wow, that's weird.
yeah, when he was around the Wenatchee area back in the 70s. So yeah,
that's cool.
And she's still alive. So wonderful lady.
Wow.
She's
wow,
an artist lady that took art from my dad actually too. So
wow.
There's a connection there, but
That's
but
funny,
they didn't the old schooler guys didn't quite get it, kind of like what some of us newer, and when I say newer, of course, I'm in the, Thomas Steenberg. I'm the same age as Tom Steenberg. We both graduated in 1979, so I'm kind of from that next generation up after the old school guys, the Greens and the Dahindens and stuff like that.
Yeah, are you guys still considered Gen X?
I actually am considered a baby boomer, but
yeah, because I think
I know
you're
it's
right
weird to
cutoff.
think.
Yeah.
But I'm Generation Jones. There's a subpar that they call Generation Jones, so I'm going with that.
Okay.
Look it up sometime. Yeah, it's a real thing.
I will.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So who else besides? So obviously Tom Steenberg. You guys are like the second generation of big. I hate to say second generation because it started back in early 1900s, at least us European. But so who else besides Thomas Steenberg? Were you out there running around in the woods with?
Oh gosh, bunch of people. I mean, I met Igor Burstov when he came to America one time, and we took him up into the mountains above Yakima there when I was with Bob. Bob Gimlin's a really good friend, personal friend. And some of his family lives here in town here, but I got to know Bob, and we really hit it off and became really good family friends, and not just Bigfoot stuff, yeah, great times with him. I've done a few of the conferences early on and everything. I feel like I had to kind of step away from some of that. I think there's way too many conferences actually, to tell you the truth.
Gosh.
You're right.
It's and the talk, in the old days you had to write a paper. about something and present a paper. But now it's just about selling stuff and setting the table up and vendors and you know, and all that stuff. And I guess it's okay for some people. You know, some people don't get a chance to get close to some of this stuff depending on where you're living at. But I don't think we're getting any further ahead by doing conferences or anything like that. I mean, you know, we're all sharing some stuff and ideas, and that's cool, you know, and I don't know. This whole Bigfoot thing is just, it's really, really strange.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's a lot different than 1988 when you first, you know, got involved.
Yeah, you know, I'm kind of old school with that, and I liked the old documentaries and stuff. It's even like some of these TV shows now, you know, that they make with the Bigfoot. You know, it's like, gosh, would just love to get back to a true old documentary, just using real people, you know, but don't have a storyline. Don't have someone over there in the corner writing a storyline, because that's the difference.
Yeah, we just watched one, and then there's Sasquatch Odyssey was pretty good. You know, that was that was
actually
good.
My good friend is in that, and pictures in that. There's a young Rick Knoll, who you guys have maybe heard of Rick Knoll.
Yeah, Rick was I was in my first book. So
okay, so the Sasquatch Odyssey, in the side credits, there's some extras in there, and there's a picture of my good friend who just passed away this last year, and he lives up on Blewett Pass, and he had a dramatic encounter of a white Bigfoot tearing his chicken pen open and then laid 5 chickens in a row with all their beaks in the same direction. And a young Rick Knoll interviewed him, and there's pictures of Rick Knoll and Dean on the Sasquatch audio video. Wow. And the cabin's still there. Dean lived in this cabin, and it's on the original homesteaders cabin from the 1800s. It was actually a gas station in the 1920s for Blewett Pass, and then it was converted into an old cabin. But he lived there the whole time, and his encounter happened in 1978 in January. And it came right in, was right outside it, and it's documented in books, and it's actually on Monster Quest too. One of the Washington Monster Quest ones.
So Paul, you had mentioned before how you've had like hundreds and hundreds of witness accounts. Can you like tell us about maybe one of like a really extraordinary one?
Oh, like just
someone you talked to.
Yeah, someone you talked to, and their story was just, you know, like extraordinary. Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, there's Jim Henry. You know, I know there's many more, but Jim Henry would be one. I mean, he had a lifetime of encounters. He had his place over in the Olympics, off the Hump Tulips River, and had some property over there, and had numerous encounters. You know, with the. In fact, I had an encounter just right next to his property over there with one of my friends. The new landowner let us stay out there one night, and apps 100% this Bigfoot light came right up to us after we were just getting ready to go to bed, and it screamed. First it ran towards us because we could hear the footsteps, then it screamed, and then it beat on its chest, and then it pushed over a tree, all within 30 seconds. And it was just, well, our tents were set up, and it was the Hump Tulips was in flood stage, and our tents were set up pretty close to the Hump Tulips, just behind these trees. And I was terrified after that happened. But, you know, Jim had a whole, you know, 5 or 10 years worth of encounters in there with this one Bigfoot that would always come up and watch him. And he actually named the Bigfoot. And, you know, the Bigfoot wasn't just like out in the open. It was always back in the trees and staying just out of sight unless it was pitch dark out there. He had an encounter when it was pitch dark out there one night, and he was right next to one of them. And it was when the Hump Tulips was in in flood stage again, and he was taking little sticks and sticking them in the ground to see how high up the water was coming.
Didn't he you mentioned in a previous, I think something I heard you talk about, didn't he almost felt like he almost fell into it?
Fell into it, yeah, correct. Yeah, there's a on YouTube, he talks about his encounter, and that was part of it. But, you know, he gave me, it was such a wide variety of things that happened to me. I had to write a song, so I did write a song. It's called Jim Henry, and it's available on YouTube.
It's a great song. Yeah, we were going to get into that here. You were kind of leading right into the music with Jim Henry. But before we talk about that, didn't he also didn't he see one swimming with moose or something like that?
Yeah, it was elk. That's the
Elk.
first
Oh.
line. That's the first line of my song. But yeah, he was up in a high mountain lake. He was married to somehow relation to Eddie Bauer, and so in the early 50s and 60s, when he
Oh.
was making all the camping gear, he had available to him camping gear and backpacks, and they did a lot of backpacking and camping, and they would go up to these lakes up in the Olympics, and that's when he had his one of his first encounters was up at one of these small lakes. He saw these elk swimming, and then saw something kind of back behind it like it was herding, and then all the elk got out, and then the Bigfoot was the last thing, and it got out, and he said it looked like it was tiptoeing around on its tiptoes, kind of like soldiers when they get into their boots before they lace them up, and it was kind of tiptoeing around on the edge of the water, and then just walked and disappeared out into the trees. I don't know. He didn't say anything about if he heard anything like it was trying to hunt the elk or whatever. I think that's probably more than likely something like that. I don't know of it.
Yeah, why would he be swimming? But who knows?
Yeah.
Elk, elk are big too. But I would assume that they would try to defend themselves. But obviously,
well, he thought it was a ranger when he first got out, wearing all black Filson outerwear, like wool, but he said that it was in such great shape it looked like a bodybuilder in Filson wear, all one color, dark black. So,
oh wow,
I guess maybe they make dark black Filson wear. I don't know. I know they make black and red checkers.
Yeah, I can imagine, Paul, too, that I mean, a lot of your witness accounts that you've taken are from, like non-Sasquatch people. So these are just like people who are out in the woods or doing whatever. I mean, was there a common kind of thing that people were doing with these witness accounts?
Yeah, so you get a lot of common. That's a good question, but yeah, absolutely. I would say probably your two or your three biggest ones would be, one, car sightings of a creature walking either in front or behind. I've gotten both, actually. People seeing them in their rearview mirrors too. And I actually talked to the Quinault Indians about that. Why does the Bigfoot run in front of you? And they said it was a distraction, but I don't know why it would take one to run in front of your car unless it was like practice or something. Maybe they're practicing for something, but they said that a lot of times as one was walking in front, there might be two or three more walking behind you. Like
right. Yeah. If they run behind you, you're not
family maybe moving through, or there seems to be a diversion with them when there's multiples of them around. There's a new film that was shot this last year that I haven't released yet that was taken in the mountains outside of Wenatchee up here. And it shows the people that shot the film came around the corner in their 4x4 Razor and saw two upright creatures completely covered in black. Immediately, one of them dove down into the grass, and the other one nonchalantly walks off. This is all on film. I've got it. It's all on film. Me and John Andrews went up there twice, and where the thing was in the grass, it was ducking its head up and down. And when you go through frame by frame, you can see this black thing ducking up and down. Well, I found what looked like knee prints right on that exact same spot, because we found the exact spot where they filmed it. And I actually casted the knee prints, and there's hair striation marks in the what I think are knee prints. So got those. It's an interesting film. We'll probably maybe release it at some point. It like I said, why would this secondary one dive into the grass while the other one is almost like leading it off or trying to lead it away or something? I don't know what the deal is, but it's an interesting film anyway. And at some point we'll probably share it. It's just like films though, you can share it, you can tell the birds come home, and you're always going to get this or that. And it just doesn't really do much. I mean, they're fun to look at and analyze. And if it is a Bigfoot, there's some interesting things in the film that you can learn from, but other than that, you're not going to get much else done with it, probably.
I just have like a quick question because it's just something that popped into my head. So have you ever had an experience where you've seen its face?
The Bigfoot face? No.
Yes. No. Okay.
That's
But how
the thing.
about witness accounts? What are they saying about that?
Oh yeah, no, very humanish looking. In fact, 90% of all my reports, people, the first report that I got, the one that really set me on the guy saw it through a rifle scope, and he said the thing was like it was crouched down across this small little pond. He was hunting. It was late October. And he'd gone into the trees. He got dropped off on this corner. His friend said, pick me back up here in an hour or whatever. He was just going to take off this one corner and hunt this one little section. Came across a small pond, and this thing was crouched down. And he put his rifle up, looked through it through the scope, and he said the thing was making like grimacing facial movements and, real humanish looking, but no, not really hair on the face, but like darker, dark, and
Right.
it was crouched down, but it was the facial. He kept saying how the facial movements just reminded him of like a human or something, and there was no way he said that he could shoot. I mean,
Sometimes that happens though. Like if you're watching a documentary with other primates, you're like, oh my gosh, look at their eyes
Right.
there. But that's so I guess my question is more, do you think that from what you've heard, that the Sasquatch face is more human than it is like gorilla or
oh,
monkey?
absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like I said, 90-some%. They're very adamant about how humanish they look.
Okay. But just
so
darker. Mm-hmm.
Well, darker, but different colors too. I've gotten
Mhm.
reports of like the one Dean saw. It was a white one actually, and it had a darker black V shape going down the back. It was dark, but he thinks it was the hair. It was like a big tuft of hair that was darker black. He actually made a picturama thing, and it was gifted to me in his will, and I have it here that he made of the creature that night, and
Wow.
it shows the V in the back. And the shoulders went way up. Real broad shoulders. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you for answering that, because I'm always really curious about that.
So, how close have you come to seeing? I mean, you've had some visuals. I think I've heard you mention before. I think you have one when you were driving. But how close have you come to seeing one?
Well, this latest thing in 2020 is the one that's really just. I mean, I saw something, and it wasn't by no means 100%. But what I saw looked like the side of an arm and the side of a head and kind of the shoulder area, just going into these trees. Like I said, about 30 seconds to a minute after this tree got pushed down, what sounded like a tree. I mean, it actually sounded like an explosion. I mean, there was just this instant car crash loudness right across from where we had our camp set up. And this is the same camp that me and John were just in, exact same camp. And so we waited a minute, and then I said, okay, wait a second. And then we got up and we walked over there towards the sound a little bit. And there's an area right there in a group of trees, and it blocks off the road and everything from back here. Well, I just decided just to walk away from them for a little bit. And I walked down just a little bit, and just through the trees, I just caught this thing going into the trees. I mean, and you could definitely see it was something. I thought it was a deer at first.
Wow.
And, because it was a lighter color. It was a kind of a buckskin color.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't real dark, but
so like blonde.
It wasn't really blonde. It was
or like a dark blonde.
Yeah, dark.
Yeah.
I mean, it was still dark, but it was buckskinish kind of.
Okay.
And like I said, it was hard. It was really hard to tell, but what I could see, I mean, was like this arm and this head, and I just caught the very last end of it. I go, what's that? It's like, I couldn't even believe what I was seeing. But so yeah, I mean, no, not a facial, straight on. I don't know if I want to look right in the eyes of one of these things, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, because you spend a lot of time in the woods, you may not want to go out there again.
Well,
after
he's something
that
that can run around in the woods, in these, heavy woods with that you and me, even during the day, we could get impaled at any moment, and they're running around like it's nothing. I mean, what is going on? These things must be, yeah.
Yeah. So, because we can't let you, because we still have some time, but I want to
Mhm.
talk about uh, you feel that they build structures.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So
Oh, I know they do.
when did you come to that realization?
When they left things for me right down the road from this particular same valley. And like this stuff happens within days. It's not just like I'm hiking out in the woods and I come across stuff and find it. No, it's things that are directed right toward to me and right absolutely directed to me. Like the one spot down the road that I took John Bindernagel to, it was right where I had my one-man tent, and it was a brand new camp that we made. No one had ever camped in this area. It was just in the forest. I actually had to break branches off just to get enough room to get my tent set up in this area. And then it replicated my tent. It actually grabbed a alder branch that didn't even grow in this area. There's a creek, and you got to go down by the creek to get these alder branches. And it was brought up and made into a perfect arch, the same height as my one-man tent. I mean, it was within an inch the same height. And then there was a small teepee where my head was, and there was all these other sticks stuck in the ground like
But when you got there, Paul, so they weren't there when you first set up your tent, right?
No, we'd been there 2 weeks earlier. We'd been going to this spot. So it was within a 2-week period that they all appeared. And then another time right up at my spot, the same valley, this was just 2 years ago. It took vine maple and there was broken vine maple all sprinkled around my tent when I woke up. Like, and have you ever tried to break vine maple? It's super hard. And there was no storms or wind that night. It was like this stuff just literally appeared. So somebody or something put it there overnight. There's just no doubt about it. And, with the action that we've seen up there, it's more than likely our candidate that we're going after, it's
right.
just,
Well, and you found prints near some of these structures in the past, haven't you?
yeah. Oh yeah. I casted one of them. Sure. But that's what's out there. That's what's out there in the woods. There's sticks and rocks and wood and, it would be to think that they're just not out there making prints and twiddling their thumbs, these Bigfoots. They've got to be interacting with the earth out there and utilizing things. So playing with sticks or that just seems natural almost to me, more natural than not, almost. I mean, they have to be doing things other than just leaving prints and walking around.
Yeah,
yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And the communication, I really believe they reach out to certain people that they know a person's vibe on what they are, and I totally believe that. I just do. And they're that they may come in and mess with a certain people, but they're real mischievous. That's the thing I got to tell people. They're just so much mischievous. It's like kind of like I don't know how to put it, but it's almost like, hey, let me see if I can go over here and get in some trouble, but hopefully I won't. It makes you wonder because they're smart, but they're also kind of just doing their own thing. I mean, it's can't wrap my head around it, but sometimes the things they do, it just makes you double think. Just when you think you're getting them figured out, and then all of a sudden something happens, it's like, nope.
Wow.
So
what would what advice would you give to people that are just wanting to get into this and wanting to get out in the woods and start doing investigation or research? What advice would you have for newbies?
Well, read up on some of the stuff, if you can get a book or two and actually read a book. I know there's a lot of things online and stuff like that, but a lot of that stuff has a narrative, and then it's kind of like one way, or whatever. And I think there's other great info out there from some of the early researchers that I would suggest, reading or getting your hands on. And then the second thing is if you want to have an encounter with Bigfoot, anybody can have an encounter with Bigfoot. Go into an area where there's a history of them, and you set up a camp and you camp normal. You don't have Bigfoot on your brain. Don't do calls. Put out a few wood knocks every once in a while. I don't really feed them. I'll leave some small things around to see if they get moved or whatever, but just camping normal and staying in the same place for as long as you can. Also leaving one area, like where all the stuff happens up in this particular valley, I know it's all directed from one area. I mean, you can just feel the area where they're coming from, and that's where all the trees get pushed over and a lot of the wood knocks come from. And I don't go over there. And you would think, oh, I'm going to go over there and hike around. Haven't gone over there yet in 20 years.
Wow.
And the reason is because out of respect.
Out of respect, and I just know that by leaving that avenue open, that's going to make things much deeper and much more. You might have something happen if you go over there and maybe find something, but then it could also shut things down. So I've always left that one area open, and then I just am real predictable. Humans are predictable. We go into our little rooms, what I call rooms. They're like little camp areas. Like Washington State, we're really privileged here to have what's called dispersed camping. And basically you can go anywhere you want into the forest, and there's these dispersed campsites.
So awesome.
That are, carved out in the trees and stuff. And a lot of times it's bare ground where people walk around the campfire ring and stuff. So you've got these little bare rooms, and when we're in these little rooms just doing our stuff, that's when the Bigfoots like to come down and mess with you. So a lot of campers have, in campsites and stuff, get up in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock, and see a Bigfoot, right there watching them or walk across. So a lot of campers have just being out camping, but I encourage, don't try to do all the Bigfooty stuff. A lot of people want to put lights up and all this kind of stuff. Bigfoots don't like lights. I'll tell you that much right now. They do not like lights. So if you have a darker camp, there's a lot of fire restrictions, so we don't have a fire a lot of times during the summer, but that's okay. I like a cold camp. You can also hear way better. And if you do have a fire, you can't stand around the fire all night and talk, because you're going to be missing a lot of stuff. Or if you want to do that, at least put a recorder out, 1/8 mile away from your camp and hide it real good, because audio recording is a great way to get evidence. It really is much better than cameras and thermal and all that stuff. I mean, if you really want to get some cool stuff, audio is the way to go.
Yeah, I think I'm coming to learn that too as time goes on, that it's just another one of our senses, and why isn't it just as important as seeing one?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So and I like your philosophy too, Paul, on just go camping, just do a normal thing, because something tells me if they know that they're being hunted or trying to get caught on camera, that they're not going to be, they're going to be.
No, an old timer actually told me that about getting close to these, and I believed him, and it's worked for me over the years, and I've seen other people bop around, and if they don't hear a sound, it can be much deeper than just hearing a sound or something. I mean, these things they come right into my camp. And they jumped in the back of my friend's truck 2 years ago at this same spot.
Oh my God.
I thought it was him, and he was with his wife, and this was like at 4:30 in the morning, and we had our mountain bikes too. And so I thought he was getting in the back of his truck. And I mean, it sounded just like somebody in the back of his truck making a bunch of noise. It's like, and so I'm laying there. I'm like, hey, Josh, what are you doing, Josh? And I finally poked my head up, and I didn't see anybody. So I decided, well, what the heck was that? So I got up, walked over, and their tent was on the other side of his truck. He was in there with his wife, both snoring fast asleep. So there was something in the truck. I didn't see it, and I should have looked, because I didn't look. I was just laying there going, Josh, what are you doing? But yeah, they definitely come right into camp and kind of mess with you. So it can be kind of scary at times. I can
imagine.
Well, I've even changed my thoughts a little bit, because I used to be, I guess, getting older too, it's best to have two people, but even sleeping on the ground in this particular place, it's like, I might start sleeping in the back of my truck and get up off the ground at least. And
yeah, I'm not I'm right there with
then they
you.
just come in and start rocking your truck while you're in there. It's like,
great. At least you're in the truck. If you got to take off, you got the keys right there.
Unfortunately, I'd be in the bed, and the keys would be up front, so I'd still have to.
Well, you'd have to shimmy yourself through.
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh,
So
boy.
here's a question too, because you were mentioning before, Paul, how you were going to release some film. Do you like, because, this is like probably like an important question that we always want to have towards the end of our show is how can people follow you? Like, where do you release this film?
That's a good question. More than
Mhm.
likely, I would probably put it on YouTube. I do have my own YouTube channel, and
Oh, okay, cool.
folks can
What's-
Paul
have it.
Graves.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, and I have different categories on there, like folders or whatever. So I've got like my Bigfoot songs, and I got some hominology investigation stuff, and then I've got just some regular Paul Graves stuff. So there's some different folders that you can click through, and
Okay, cool.
more than likely I would put it on that. I mean, Facebook and stuff, I am on Facebook, but it's hard, back in 2013 or 14 when the Sunny Slope tracks were brought to my attention and I went and investigated that whole thing. I did end up putting it out on Facebook, and I was really amazed how big it blew up. I mean, it was huge. I mean, it got out to people that I didn't even know, and so, I mean, I know there's goods and bads of both, but I always like to present my stuff. I've got some papers that I've written, and they are available at the Sasquatch Canada website. And I don't know if you
Okay.
guys are familiar with that website, but
Yeah, it's
great.
Chris Murphy,
Chris
right?
Murphy
Yeah.
pretty much runs it, and there's another gal up there that helps also, and she's part of it. But it's a great one of the best for me websites, because there's just historical, but there's also new stuff on there, and it's all written more like in articles and well written, stuff. And then he's got this thing called Bits and Pieces, and there's a few of my papers short papers that I've written that are published up in that. So I encourage people, if you want to see some cool Bigfoot stuff, go to sasquatchcanada.com.
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll put some links in the notes here for the audience. So we'll put a link to that. We'll put a link to Paul's YouTube, and you guys got to check his music out, because he's got some of the coolest music. I don't know what one's my favorite. Maybe Bigfoot and Butterflies, possibly.
Yeah.
And actually, Paul, outside of Bigfoot, dude, I was totally digging the cover you did for a Space Odyssey.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And one of my favorite songs anyway, but you just you rocked it out, man. So,
oh, thank you. I love that song too. Yeah. I love all that classic stuff.
And we're excited. So I think Paul, he's already, I'm putting him on the spot now. Paul's going to be in the next book too.
Okay, cool.
Right, Paul?
Oh, sure. I guess.
Yes. Yeah. So
Awesome.
we'll chat about that here real soon too.
So we'll put all your links in of where everybody can follow you too. And we really appreciate you being on the show and getting to know you. You have some great stories. And it was just really fun.
You guys do. This was fun. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And you got a cool thing here. I appreciate you guys doing it. And
this is
no
all
problem.
Doug and Alex Highcheck. We're just riding the coattails. They created the podcast network, and we're just
Doug's great. Yeah.
Yeah, we love Doug. They're great folks. So
that's awesome.
All right. Well,
cool,
Paul, thanks again, honey. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys, and just take care, and hopefully we'll be chatting again soon sometime.
Sounds
if you're ever
good.
up this way in Washington, look me up for sure.
We will. We'll get to see what you look like. Well,
right.
Yeah. Well, we'll catch up here soon, Paul, too. And so we can talk about the book.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Cool. Paul. Thanks so much.
Cool. Thank you guys. Take care.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.
Okay.
You too.
Bye.
Well, that was pretty cool.
Paul's awesome.
I like Paul. Yeah, he's a cool dude. I want to. I really. This was like our first podcast without seeing somebody. So I had to, like, if you see me making funny faces, I'm trying to visualize what he's talking about. But some pretty cool stories, and I like his vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I like his vibe of just kind of like chill out. Mm-hmm. Be a camper, be a whatever, and they'll come to you.
And his music, you guys check his music out, because it's kind of the same vibe. It kind of gives you that. He's got some fun, and he's got some fun Bigfoot songs too,
right?
That he's written. He wrote himself. So,
and I love how open-minded he is as well, because guess what? At the end of the day, nobody really knows. So,
right. Yeah, and we didn't even ask him that question. We kind of got it out of him.
I know, because some of these just go so fast.
Yeah,
and you guys get bored after an hour, so we gotta chopped up. Close it
So,
up.
Anyway, we appreciate each and every one of you guys.
Yep.
This is so much fun, and
Yep.
it gives us an opportunity to talk to all these cool people. We love it.
Yeah,
and I
we
hope
do.
you guys learn something and enjoy it. And make sure you check out the Untold Radio Network. You can go to the BigfootInfluencers.com. Like I mentioned, working on book 2. Doug's already created the book cover. I'm going to maybe share that soon for everybody. And just kind of working through some of it already. So,
And don't forget to comment below.
Yep. Thank you guys.
And like and subscribe.
Do all that fun stuff.
Share.
And we'll talk to you real soon.
All right. Bye.